Okay, so this is chapter 2 of I Am Malala, the girl who stood up for education and was shot by the Taliban. So we're up to chapter 2. I've just got some brief notes here that you probably don't really need to copy. But that General Zia in 1977 is Islamization, which is a hard word to say, that her grandfather is called Baba, and that the focus of this chapter is on her father's speech problems and oratory. So the first line, we want to have love and support. So I always knew my father had trouble with words. So this is just kind of pretty clear cut. You could also comment on the way that she sort of grows in her speech making abilities, whereas he is also strong at this, but here she talks about his troubles kind of as a way to show her progression. Just got a little symbol for Islam down there in the corner for holy man. Then jumping ahead, we've got Superstition on the right here. So I'm just going to draw a very hastily drawn black cat. So the superstition they're calling about is when they were taken in to see the poor, they were to open his mouth and then spat into it, and then they took dark molasses, yada yada. Kind of like different things they do to ward away evil and that sort of stuff. Then we've got a little picture of education down here. School wasn't the only thing my aunt missed out on. It's down the bottom here. So we just draw a little man teaching or a little woman teaching. An indiscriminate gender, I guess. And then I've just got gender roles, which for me is green down the bottom, for when it says if there were eggs, they would only be for the boys. Because obviously that's quite a sexist thing, especially in a place if not everyone's getting the right nutrients. Selecting one gender over the other probably isn't ideal. Then we've got, again, my grandfather had studied in India, so a little picture of a person teaching on a whiteboard or a blackboard. Then we've got, as stories from the Quran and the Hadith, the sayings of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So we've got a little symbol for Islam there. You got to be aware that this book is banned in Pakistan partly because of that, her failure to say peace be upon him when she refers to the Prophet, but I'm not exactly sure where she failed to do so, so it's sort of something to look out for yourself. Then we've got a little picture of scales of justice here, and a little sketch for the Swat Valley, or however you want to draw it better than that, hopefully. So they're talking about Pakistani justice system and how it was less effective than their old tribal ways. So the sort of tension between what is good justice and what's the best way is being discussed here. Jumping ahead, General Zia launched a campaign of Islamization to make us a proper Muslim country. So obviously that's referring to Islam. Then we need gender roles here. For under Zia's regime, life for women in Pakistan became much more restricted. So obviously, so the process she's kind of describing, and to her this is sort of when things are getting worse. And then again, there are two powers in the world. One is the sword, and the other is the pen. There is a third power stronger than both, that of women. So that would be a very useful quote to memorize or prepare for a test or an exam. So it kind of covers multiple themes. And then I'm also going to draw a little pen here. The pen is one of our symbols, and violence, which I draw with a sword, is another. So we've kind of got both. She's expanding on that, the sword, and the other is the pen, to show kind of her views on things, on the two sides of things. Then again, gender. As a nation, we have always been good at hockey, but Zia made our female hockey players wear baggy trousers instead of shorts and stopped women playing sports altogether. So the Islamization is kind of impacting on gender, and she's obviously using that to show, especially our Western readers, that this is a bad thing and that the things that occurred in Pakistan were bad. Nothing to report on 25, so jump ahead. Then we've got some of our theme of corruption. So it was as if under Zia, jihad had become the sixth pillar of our religion on top of the five we grew up to learn: the belief in God, namaz or prayers five times a day, giving zakat or alms, rosa, fasting from dawn till sunset during the month of Ramadan, and Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. which every able-bodied Muslim should do once in their lifetime. So you could even have Islam and culture. So she's doing the job of teaching her Western audience about Islam, but she's also showing how it's being misconstrued or misinterpreted or misapplied, or in her opinion, sort of being used as a tool of the oppression of women. So then we've got taught basic arithmetic through fighting, which is again more corruption. They had examples like, out of 10 Russian infidels, 5 are killed by 1 Muslim, 5 would be left, or 15 bullets minus 10 bullets equals 5 bullets. So this is a really clear and shocking example of the way that sort of the culture is changing towards violence. So we should have a little image of that there. Pardon me, cat. So at that time, Talib simply meant religious student. So we've got foreshadowing there. That's an example of kind of, she's obviously suggesting that they will become something other than simply that. So we draw a little line there. Then we got on page 27, it was, he says, a kind of brainwashing. So this is both corruption and teaching, which to Malala especially is probably perhaps one of the most horrendous things that you can do, which is corrupting the thing that she most loves, which is education, of course. Especially education for women, but education generally as well. And then our education at government schools meant learning by rote, and pupils were not supposed to question teachers. So corrupt knowledge again, and also maybe even the symbol for corruption, which is a little black cat, if I can draw it properly for once. Because this is, I guess, as far as she's concerned, where the sort of superstitious beliefs in Pakistan come from. Then we've got here, a famous poem was written at that time by Rahmat Shah Sayal, the same Peshwa poet who wrote the poem about my namesake. So that's an intertextual reference to another book, in this case a poem and a poet. And then we've got a simple simile, like the grass crushed by the hooves of 2 fierce beasts. So note down a simile there. Flying through it, on 28 we've got politics, where it talks about he found himself torn between the 2 extremes, secularism and socialism on one side and militant Islam on the other. So that's just something that's happened. You don't really need to record it too perfectly. I actually kind of crossed it out there. And then bottom of 28, in our society you have to take revenge for such slights, but my father was much smaller than his cousin. So she's talking about the Swat Valley, violence, and also the Pashtun culture, which is something she does spends a lot of time teaching us about. Then on this right hand page, she loved him so much that she would slip him extra meat and cream off the milk while she went without. So that's of course love and support. It shows kind of the nice pleasant upbringing that members of her family had. Pashtuns are famously frugal, though generous with the guests. Again, that's Pashtun culture. He felt ashamed but had no choice if he didn't want to end up illiterate, which is of course education and illiteracy, which of course we're starting to get the picture. She really thinks is one of the worst things that can happen. Then here, top of 30-ish, he always says that though Baba was a difficult man, he gave him the most important gift, the gift of education. So she's really showing her colours, what she thinks education is the best. In my grandfather's Friday address, he would talk about the poor and their landowners and how true Islam is against feudalism. So just like what she is doing, her father is also saying that Islam shouldn't be used as a tool for these people that they disagree with. We've also got an intertextual reference in education again when it said he read the great poems of Saidi, Allama, Iqbal and Rumi to my father. So to her that's the most beautiful gift that you can give to someone, education and a love of reading and learning. Ziyadun is a Shaheen, a falcon, because this is a creature that flies high above other birds. And instead he just called himself Ziyadun Yousafzai, our clan name. So that's language. And also referring to her father as a falcon is of course a metaphor. So that's that whole chapter done. I'll be doing the next one in a bit. Chapter 3.